Hi there, this is Mr. Evans. This video looks at how to approach the 16 mark questions in paper 2. I've done some videos on paper 2. It's one case study comprising of approximately 7 questions, and there are two 16 mark questions towards the end of the paper before the 20 mark question. The very basic structure for answering 16 mark evaluation questions is that you've got to present two sides of an argument and then come to a conclusion. So 4 paragraphs, a very short paragraph, not even a paragraph really, just a sentence defining the key term, then using the case study to analyse reasons for, new paragraph, analyse reasons against, and a conclusion. So by now in the Unit 2 case study you have answered a few calculation questions and 2 9-mark questions by the time you get to the 16 markers, of which there are 2. And your brain has been kind of whirring away subconsciously while you've been answering those questions, and you're beginning to get a bit of an understanding of the case study, a holistic understanding, which is going to help you make the links that you need to make to answer these 16 mark questions and to show this analysis. So what does a good 16 mark paragraph look like? Well, you start off by paraphrasing the question to show the examiner that you are answering the question. You use the case study to support your answer. You build a logical chain of reasoning, and if you can, you get in some evaluation at the end of the paragraph. However, this depends on, this is a strong argument, this is a weak argument, just some way of building in some evaluation to your analysis and really clearly making sure that you have linked back to the question and that your answer answers the question. So the question that I'd like to look at is this question here. It's from the 2016 paper 2. This business, Mind Candy, remains a private limited company despite some pressure to become public limited. Do you believe the business should continue to be a private limited company? Justify your answer. So the structure should be relatively obvious. I would define private limited company, reasons for becoming a private limited company or continuing to be a private limited company, reasons that they might want to become a public limited company, and then the conclusion. So that's what we'll be looking to work towards. Now then, this is an example of an answer that got 14 marks. Now, as I said, it's important to have a strategy for reading the case study. Now, if you before you read the case study, if you had a quick scan through the questions and you saw this question on private versus public limited company, this is the key paragraph for you, and you know it's the key paragraph because it's got the term public limited company here, private limited company here, so you know that there's going to be information in this paragraph that can help you answer this question. So what is the information? Well, the business needs substantial extra investment to keep developing new titles, new products, and becoming a public limited company will help to raise more finance. However, on the other hand, the directors want to manage the business in a way that preserves its key values and believe that being a private limited company is the best way of doing this. Okay, so now I've read through the case study, I've answered a few questions, I've got quite a good understanding now of this business. One of the key values is about unethical behaviour, and I can start to make a bit of an argument out of linking this idea of private limited company. The directors get to keep control over the business, they get to behave in that ethical way, whereas that might be put at risk if they become a public limited company. Okay, so I can see I'm developing a bit of an argument here. Now, I won't go through this in a great amount of detail, feel free to pause the video if you want and have a read of this answer, which achieved 14 marks according to AQA. I have just highlighted a couple of things. This paragraph here mentions if they were to become a public limited company appear on the stock market, they'd be able to gain lots of extra investment. Right, we know that extra investment needed to develop titles. Develop new titles. Extra investment can make the expansion happen a lot quicker. It's not a great answer, to be honest, but it's still got enough to achieve 14 marks. They're keen to keep the management the same, focusing on the same key values. It comes from this same paragraph, okay? That focusing on the key values, if the company were to appear on a stock exchange, then the current directors would lose a lot of their control. With control being given away, the company may not be able to avoid unethical behaviour. Okay, so you can see the argument has been made using a very limited selection of the case study, but it was answering the case study that allowed you to get to that application immediately. And you can see if you've read the case study well and highlighted it well, you're going to go straight here when you're answering that question, and it will provide you, that answer got 14 marks. The feedback on the answer. The first paragraph shows some understanding of PLC as a type of ownership, although the expression has grammatical problems at the start. The second paragraph makes a relevant point developed in context. A counterpoint is developed well in context in the third paragraph, and this forms the basis of the judgment in the final paragraph. This judgment clearly links back to the question and moves it beyond level 3. Let me just show you a paragraph that I believe is a bit better than the 14 mark one we just saw. Okay, so hopefully you can see how I've gone through these steps, paraphrasing the question, using the case study, building a logical chain of reasoning, and even a little bit of evaluation at the end of the paragraph. So I believe there is a good argument. This is a bit of evaluation, all right? Now, the examiner won't just award me evaluation for saying good argument there, but I'm putting across what the strength of the argument is, and it's a good argument, and the examiner might think that I'm starting to evaluate already. I believe there is a good argument to become a public limited company, which is that Mindcandy would be able to gain, they're supposed to be there, the required investment into the business. The extra investment would be needed to help fund the development of new titles, all from that paragraph. This is because the development of new software tends to be quite expensive due to the high wages that need to be paid to staff, evidenced by the rising staff costs as a proportion of turnover. This comes from me doing some calculations using the information in the case study. Okay, they've given me sales revenue, they've given me staff costs. I know immediately, because I know my formulas, that I can calculate staff costs as a percentage of turnover. And that's actually risen in recent years. So I'm using that to back up my argument. Evidenced by the rising staff costs as a proportion of turnover and the high cost of marketing new games. Okay, so I've explained in context, building a chain of argument, why becoming a public limited company would be a good idea. It's going to help us gain this investment that we need, and there's a lot of investment needed. However, Mindcandy made a loss in 2013. Where does that come from? Well, again, it's using the data in the case study. It tells me that they made a loss of 2.2 million, which may put off some investors, and it may be possible to find the required finance from alternative sources like Spark Ventures. So overall, what I've done is that I have explained why it would be a good idea to become a public limited company. It's quite a good argument. They're going to need a lot of money. However, there is some evaluation here. It might be difficult to attract the investors because they made a loss, and it might be possible to find required finance from alternative sources like Spark Ventures, who have already lent them money. So that's my analysis. Now, I need to also evaluate and answer the question. Well, this person, so I think that the nature of the business, how it runs, means they should remain as a private limited company. It's quite a good start to the conclusion. They've answered the question clearly, because that's a key word here. They've explained, what's the cause, what's the reason for that. They're about to explain their answer. The areas they care about the most won't be forgotten about, and they can continue to focus on the purpose of the company, virtual entertainment, and the ethical issues they work to without input from other shareholders. The company can continue to focus and develop new titles just at a slower rate than if they receive further investment. So they're hinting at a bit of a problem here. It's a bit of a slower rate than if they receive further investment. Now, the judgment clearly links back to the question, and this focus moves the answer beyond level 3 and into lower level 4. To improve this answer, the foundations of the argument in the second and third paragraph could be deeper and more complex. Is it really so certain that becoming a PLC would always lose ethical behaviour? In terms of being an LTD, are there ways to raise finance capital without becoming a PLC? Okay, so I've kind of already addressed that. My conclusion that hits my 4 points for a conclusion. The first thing that you need to do is answer the question. I believe that they should remain as a private limited company. What's my support for that? Is because it will enable the business's directors to retain their ethical values, which has helped the business to grow. Basic conclusion there, they should remain because they will help them retain control over the business. However, to do a more advanced conclusion, we need to add something. Good way of adding something to a conclusion is to identify a problem. So my problem would be, it might be difficult for the company to fund its growth, particularly important because developing new software can be very expensive. There's a high degree of risk, etc. So what's the solution? They need to look to alternative sources of finance like Spark Ventures, who would be likely to invest because of the success of the company's new products. And I would go into a bit more detail just to support that, because there's some information down here about new app analysts estimate its daily revenue to be £60,000. Social media app using encouraging reviews. So I try and make sure that the examiner knows that I understand that Spark Ventures would be likely to invest because of the success of the company's new products. Spark Ventures are a venture capitalist. So basically, in a good conclusion, 4 parts: answer the question, support your answer. There's a basic conclusion. What is a problem? Why doesn't your conclusion always work? What does it depend on is another way of saying it. Is there a solution to that? Is there an alternative way of dealing with the issue?